Right. David Ian Howe, thank you so much for coming back
Yeah.
on to Talk Beliefs. And we know you, of course, as an archaeologist based in Georgia, United States, and you are the co-host of the popular A Life in Ruins archaeology podcast. And your specialty is ethnocynology, which is the study of wolves and dogs in human cultural context. But before we start, can you just remind us a little bit about how you got into this amazing subject of ethnocynology?
Yeah, I actually thought about posting this yesterday, but I was an archaeology student. I'd always loved dogs. I'd always loved archaeology, obviously. And I saw in a textbook about a human and dog burial in Israel, and it was by the Natuthian people, which are like one of the first settled hunter-gatherers that started farming. And it's a woman who was buried with a puppy that was probably sacrificed, but like she's laying. It's like a skeleton resting in the ground with her hand on like a puppy skeleton, and I thought that was the coolest thing. And then I started learning more about dogs and wolves in ancient history and how people started domesticating them, and then it just kind of went from there.
Okay, so last time we talked about beliefs surrounding dogs and wolves and some of the rituals, some of the ancient beliefs which people have surrounding dogs, and we're going to kind of do a Halloween special because it's coming up. It's in a few days as we record this. And you've got something which really intrigued me. It came up on your Instagram, something called the black dog lore, which for people here in England, that should be fairly familiar. But perhaps you can remind us what that is and then go into some detail about exactly what the black dog lore is. And then we can go into some other things.
Sure, I'd be happy to. The black dog, spectral dog, or hellhound, is a malevolent entity whose presence heralds death. The dog is said to appear at twilight, but is most often seen in the dark of night. According to most tales, these dogs can shapeshift, have glowing red eyes, and may be associated with fire. Encountering the black dog apparition can mean many things. Many believe it means certain death. Seeing one can indicate that a person is about to die, or that the person is now marked for death. These dogs often are reported to pad and pace around cemeteries, haunted forests, and other eerie areas. In some retellings, hellhounds guard humans from other malevolent spirits, supernatural beings, or the underworld. Some find this guarding behavior to be benevolent, as the dog could be warning them of danger or death. Black dog folklore comes from the British Isles. Whether the folklore originates from indigenous Celtic mythology or is introduced by later Germanic peoples is a current debate. Celtic origin can be inferred from similar descriptions of these dogs throughout Britain, like the Scottish and Irish Cú Sithe and the Welsh Cwyn Annen, or from the Black Shook of East Anglia, where most of these stories originate. However, modern translations of these tales can still be influenced by Germanic culture. In Germanic culture, the Norse goddess Hel, the daughter of Odin, as seen in Thor Ragnarok, is said to be guarded by a black dog named Gamir. Like the Greek dog Cerberus and the black dogs of Mesoamerican mythology, all of these mythological dogs appear to be black and symbolize death.
Okay, so I know a few people in this country have probably heard of that. I didn't know about it until I saw it on your Instagram. And you say it originated here in the British Isles. So not just England, maybe Scotland, Ireland. Do we know exactly? I mean, can you elaborate a bit more about what particular clan or tribe originated this?
Yeah, so it just kind of appears all over the British Isles. There's tales in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, even North Ireland, and a specific one on the island of Guernsey, which I think is closer to France, if I remember correctly. But the most concentrated reportings of seeing this dog and the most concentrated folklore seems to come from East Anglia, where it's called the Black Shook. And East Anglia, if I remember correctly, is part of where the initial Viking raids started happening, or at least on that side of the islands. So it might have come from Germanic folklore, being with Fenrir and black dogs in that in that realm of the world.
So, David, when did you first hear about this, the black dog? I mean, you didn't know about this until fairly recently, I'm assuming, or did it come up in your studies recently?
Yeah, actually. So I inadvertently knew about it through Harry Potter, because one of the other names for the dog is called the Padfoot, which is obviously Remus Lupin's name in Harry Potter, and Professor Lupin. And also Remus is, the wolf, Remus and Romulus, and then there's also Lupin, which is wolf in Latin. But I guess I had heard about it through, when I was reading through dog mythology, I was looking for To be honest, I think Aztec mythology would be Xotlatl is the dog god that guards the underworld there, associated with the underworld.
Okay.
And I was looking up the significance of black dogs in Aztec mythology because they all appear to be black, and even in Maya mythology, black dogs seem to have some kind of like reverence to them. And I think a lot of
is it because they symbolize in the people's minds, darkness, night, mystery.
I believe so. I can't confirm that with data, but that would be my assumption, which also leads me into how I found the black dog. Was reading through some folklore, and it was comparing them to the black dogs of Britain. And I think I posted recently about the Untitled, which is like the between dog and wolf, the French term for twilight. And it's that as the sun goes down, you can't really tell if it's a dog or wolf in the distance. And I believe that all has something to do with this like creepiness of dogs and wolves in association with death.
And I would imagine something to do with the howling in the night, which we still get in horror films even today.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys have coyotes in England or in Britain.
Not that I know of, no.
Yeah, so when you're walking in the States here at night, you can hear them howling and chattering, and it's not as eerie as hearing wolves, but it's still like when it's the dead of night, it's snowing out, and you hear a pack of coyotes, it's kind of creepy. So I see where the stories come from.
Probably at some point in the past, early civilizations would have heard that sound and perhaps thought it was the moaning spirits of their ancestors or something, not realizing it was an animal.
It's actually a pretty interesting idea, yeah. Or just wolves howling in general could have just been like they're kind of a mythical kind of creature in a way, so it might have had something to do with that, yeah. Yeah, so there's tons more about it. There's a lot of so I guess to keep with the Halloween theme of this, a lot of British tales and there's countless, like more than dozens of these things. I couldn't name them all right now. Of sightings that there's probably hundreds of sightings, but at least firm like known folklore tales that I've heard. There's some criminal who was hung in 1775, I believe, for some murder that he wasn't charged with, or something like that. Anyway, it said that the black dog came out at like the time of his hanging to like spook the people that were like unrightfully hanging him or something like that. And then there was another version of the story where he was actually the troublemaker in the situation, and he turned into that wolf and like kind of haunted the town with that. There's tons of sightings on all over Britain that people see it padding around cemeteries, and that it will come out and
and we just had one behind you.
Yeah, what you doing, bud?
Literally, as you said that, your dog Strider, a black dog, went walking behind you. That's going to spook some people watching this, I tell you.
He'll come in a second. But yeah, there's
But he's friendly, so.
Yeah, he's a big dog. Right. So they said that the dog, whenever they see it, it has some kind of purpose to it. It's not just sitting around wanton. It's looking for something, or it has a clear mission, and that's what I think adds to the scariness of it. It has purpose.
Wow.
Yeah, and there's other people who, like I said in the beginning there, think that it might also herald death or herald danger, or which, I mean, that's bad, but when it comes up sometimes, it might even just be warning you of danger. Like it just appears when danger is about, kind of like the Grim Reaper. So when you see the dog, it means to stop what you're doing and go or get to safety. Not necessarily that you're going to die. But in, I guess, more of the tales, it is that you're going to die, unfortunately.
Right. Well, David, when I hear about these stories about a black dog appearing and all these associations with death and warning and transformations, all that, I just wonder if in other countries where the culture is different and dogs may not be as important or prevalent, perhaps there's similar stories of, I don't know, a black lion or a black, whatever animal is more prevalent in that country. Have you heard of anything like that?
I honestly, off the top of my head, no. I know that jaguars terrify me because they can crush your skull and they're black. But I would say black cats seem to have always been associated with, and at least in Western or maybe even specifically Germanic Celtic traditions, it signifies kind of like, association with witches. I know that's a thing. and they can mean bad luck and things when you see them.
There's still black cat sightings here in England. We saw, here's a puma that somebody took a photograph of, and where did it come from? It was on the moors.
Did not know that. Wow.
Oh yeah, look at black cat or big cat sightings in England. I don't know if it might be misinterpretations or somebody's pet that's escaped. There's lots of
so they're not endemic to England right now. They're just
no. So, but it's considered a slightly supernatural thing. But yeah, look it up.
Yeah, okay. I'll check that out. Black animals. I know in Aztec mythology, like we were just talking about, they can be like that. But I do know from a lot of my studies that it is often a black dog that is in reference. For other animals, I can't say for sure.
Okay. Well, that is really fantastic. I think people are going to be Googling black dogs now all over the place. And I'm just wondering, you mentioned, I think you alluded to Cerberus, didn't you? Or you mentioned Harry Potter, which made me think they have a sort of a Cerberus character in their three-headed dog. Called Fluffy. So I'm just wondering, what can you tell us about that particular beast?
Yeah, so Cerberus is one of my favorites. So Cerberus, and I think there's two different versions of it, that he guards the river Styx, in which, like, I guess in some cases people like try to get to the underworld to go find people. Like, he guards it so you can't get in. And then in other retellings, and this might be like a Latin translation versus Greek translation of Pluto or Dis, whoever you're talking about. But the Cerberus is like his right-hand man, like it's his steed that sits next to him, kind of like the goddess Hel. And he sits by him. So, either way, it's meant to be in that mythology like a scary entity that, obviously, with having three heads, and it's usually depicted as kind of vicious, it's meant to terrify. And I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. And obviously, people still get affected by it. That's why it keeps ending up in various things. I know in the 70s there were Sinbad movies. I think one of them. Now, of course, Harry Potter. Yeah. I mean, a big dog with a mouthful of fangs is scary enough, but when you have three heads,
yeah,
three times is bad.
With all those movies and things, like there's always lycanthropy, which is the werewolf idea that you can turn into wolves and things like that. And I believe that comes from either Celtic or Germanic origin too. It's not, I don't think, anywhere else in the world. So I've always thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, well, last time we spoke about one of your specialties, which are dog burials. And you, of course, you and your colleagues have cataloged hundreds of dog burials across the United States, especially in the Southeast. Sometimes dogs are buried along with humans, but more often on their own. Now, some people would find this pretty creepy, but to you, this is part of your everyday research, isn't it?
Yeah. So in archaeology, you're lucky if you find stones or stone tools, flakes, things like that. You're lucky if you find just scattered deer bones or rabbit bones at a site. But especially if you study dogs, you can't really see dogs any other way in the record other than finding canid gnaw marks on deer bones or finding dead dog burial. So it's essentially, that's like the holy grail for me, is to find a dead dog burial, because you can tell absolutely so much from them. You can use them not only to understand the dogs, like what size they were, what they were eating, and how, like, what they died from, and that they were buried, which just means humans did that. But you can also tell, as a proxy, you can tell what humans were doing, and you can see kind of what the climate was like, what they had time to put this dog to rest and bury its thing, so they weren't constantly on the move, things like that. Or they might have been on the move, but they still took the time to do that. You can infer culture from it, and you can see, in essence, because dogs are scavengers, the dogs are eating the crap around human camps and sites that they don't want to eat. So you can see kind of like a small trickle down of what the human diet looked like via dogs, and that's important.
Do you think they buried their dogs because they were almost humanizing them, giving them a soul, they need to be buried in order to have a soul? I don't know if we can tell this, especially going back, 30,000 years or whatever. Or is it a case of, I'm going to the afterlife and I want my dog to be there too, so if I bury him, what do you think?
It is a little of all three. And I like to think that most people bury their dogs when they pass, or maybe they were cremating them too. That's why we don't see so many. But in many instances, it is that if the dog isn't buried with the human, that's probably what it is. But in many instances, the dog is buried with the human. And in Bonn Oberkassel, the dog had died of distemper, I believe, at some point, and that's 14,000 years ago in Germany, in Bonn Oberkassel, and it is.
Yeah, we spoke about that last interview, didn't we?
Okay, yeah. So that one was buried with a human, but I don't think it was sacrificed. It died. But the one in Ein Malacha in Israel, it clearly was sacrificed because it was a puppy buried with a human that was about middle age. So at that time, that was a time of, it was their time to go. So they was buried with the puppies to be in the afterlife with a human. And I do think there are a few more instances of that. I can't think off the top of my head, especially in Mesoamerica and I know there's several in Siberia that aren't buried with humans, but it's a clear sacrifice because the dog's head is removed and things like that. So it's in a way probably meaning that they want the dogs to guard the afterlife and or be with humans in the afterlife, which I guess makes it nicer.
Yeah. Yeah, to repeat basically their function, if you like, from the human's point of view in the afterlife.
Yeah, so the function of dogs in the afterlife would either be to protect protect the human souls in the afterlife from whatever danger might be lurking there, or it's just they were sacrificed so that when humans died, the dog would be there waiting for them to guard them or just to be with them out of friendship.
Well, one thing we haven't talked about, David, is werewolves. And if we're doing this spooky Halloween special on dogs, we've got to cover that. So what can you tell us about their origins, this idea of werewolves?
Yes, so werewolves, I guess, falls under the category of lycanthropy, which is the transformation of humans into wolves. And this is usually, I assume there's stories where you can use this to your benefit, because I think it personally would be cool to be a wolf or be able to turn into one. But there is, it's usually placed upon you as a curse, or it's some kind of thing you're born with that you're ashamed of, that every full moon you turn into a wolf and terrorize the village and things like that. And this comes from Norse and Germanic, or just Germanic language speaking areas. And I believe Celtic, but it's kind of hard to say for sure because it mixes around after all the migrations, but from Northwestern Europe for sure. It's usually a curse, but you change into the werewolf sometimes permanently, and sometimes you do this and you revert back to a human once the full moon is over or when the sunrise comes back up.
Do we know why the full moon comes into it? Is because they howl at it? If that's not false.
That's my guess. I don't think I've ever. I guess I probably just assumed that's what it was, and I could be wrong. But there might be other reasons as to why.
Well, this idea of werewolves, it keeps coming into the culture. We keep seeing movies. It doesn't seem to go away. Do you think there's something about werewolves or wolves in general that's so deep in our collective consciousness, or perhaps even in our evolutionary DNA, that we have to keep resurrecting this idea of wolves within our own human narrative?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mark, and I'm glad you asked it, because I think personally, as far back as we go with wolves and dogs, it's something that we are, like we were talking about earlier with the wolves howling, it's something that gives you goosebumps. It's something that is kind of creepy in a way. And then also when you just see the power of wolves like working together as a pack, it's kind of like looking in a mirror for humans because they're such social animals and so intelligent. We know that ancient humans were probably, we know that modern humans from ethnographic accounts were watching wolf behavior to learn how to hunt better. So we can infer that ancient humans were likely doing the same thing and learning. So when humans left Africa and came to Europe and came to Asia, seeing the wolf packs there just decimating, deer and other ungulates, we learned kind of how to do that. But of course, we used weapons and things like that because we can't chase animals that fast and take them down with our mouths. So there is a deep human connection and like rivalry in a sense with wolves. And that's why in a lot of cultures, you either see that as like the highest form of respect, as with Native American cultures, like wolves are a proud animal and very respected and revered. Whereas in, obviously, to the dismay of wolf populations around the world today, in European traditions, they're usually seen as vile and vermin and scary. So they're hunted and taken out so that sheep and farmers can flourish, and like wolves aren't there attacking the things. It kind of vilifies wolves in a way, but I do know in Norse mythology and a lot of people with, in the English speaking world, wolves are still revered with a sense of like nobility and things like that. Like my family crest is 3 wolves on a shield, and it's still there. But I think it's a deep human connection with wolves that I think we asked about werewolves. There's a creepiness to wolves. There's like a dynamic between humans and wolves that if you're not human, like being a wolf would be something even scarier, kind of thing like that. Because there's a line between human and animal as wolves.
I'm just thinking when you say about a mirror, early humans might have looked at wolf packs, which, as you said before, they'd be coming close, perhaps looking for scraps or guarding their territory or whatever. And humans would look at them and go, oh, look, they're a tribe, like we're a tribe. They have this alpha, leader. We have a leader. They work together. We work together. And there'd be some sort of kinship.
Yeah, I think there was definitely a sense of kinship with them, and that's why we see wolf totems all over the place. In the southern United States, for sure, there's a lot of wolf skulls we find that are perforated in the side, which probably means that they had a rope through them and they were worn as like a headdress kind of thing, or like a wolf's, like with the skin still on it, you know what I mean? Like the furs, like wearing the wolf pelt. I find wolf totems all over Europe and Asia, where like there's wolf teeth necklaces and things like that. So there was some kind of connection between humans and wolves, that they were probably respected and revered. And like you said with the mirror, it was we're just similar, and it probably made ancient humans think. And that's kind of where dogs come from, for the interacting with them constantly, and either out of fear or out of just curiosity, we started feeding them more, and they started living around us more. And eventually, it's in Darwinian fashion, dogs kind of evolved as a niche out of wolves who could bear to be around humans.
Wow, David, that was really fascinating, just as it was before. And thank you for coming back on to Talk Beliefs to do this kind of spooky special. And I hope we haven't given anyone nightmares with thoughts of the black dog and all that. And as before, I'm going to leave in the description below your links to your Instagram, your ethnocynology website for people who are interested. And just got to say thank you very much. And hopefully we'll have you back on Talk Beliefs, or maybe even my other channel, Evolution Soup, sometime in the future.
Absolutely. Be happy.